everybody. Welcome to a special episode of Repeater. My name is Evan.
And I'm Pat.
And today we're going to talk to you about the Against Me show that we got to see last week, which was a whole ton of fun.
It ruled.
Yeah.
It was the best. I'm so happy.
If you're not familiar with Against Me, they are a longtime punk band from Florida who probably came about, I would say, in the early 2000s when we were in high school. So they've sort of been there with Pat and I since, our high school adolescent days. Against Me is one of our collective probably favorite bands, I would say, up there on the list.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So it was really great to get to go see them with Pat, me with Pat, Pat with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun to go see a band with a friend, but I think even more so when it is such a band that like you connect over, like, I mean, connecting over music is great, but when it goes back that far, that's
for sure.
Something special. Yeah,
we got to see them at House of Vans, which is a venue that's been around in Brooklyn for a bunch of years now, and sadly closing soon.
Yeah.
So this was a really cool opportunity to see sort of maybe a last hurrah show with one of our favorite bands at House of Vans.
Yeah, it was, I guess melancholy is the right word. Like, it was a great show and it was a lot of fun, but it's always sad to be at a venue that's on its way out.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, the space was really cool. There's like a skate park in one half of it. There's a bit of a catwalk up for like photographers and media. The stage itself was like pretty well sized, and a really cool outdoor area with a couple food booths and bars and stuff set up.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible space, which I think is also why I'm like, I don't want it to go. It's so fun.
Yeah, it's right down on the waterfront, kind of on the line between Greenpoint and Williamsburg in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
If you have any opportunity, I think during the next month or so, maybe is going to be their last run of shows. The shows, I believe, at House of Vans are almost always free, right? And you just you sign up for a reservation. You got to get there early and wait in line. But I will say, if it's a band you like, well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've waited in line there before, and it's not the worst thing in the world. It's leave work or whatever, and I don't know, wait in the line. It's a big space, so chances are you'll get in. Don't wait to get there for the headliner.
Yeah. But I would say most of the people we saw in line got in. I think by the time they were closing the door, it looked like the whole line was inside, which was pretty cool that all those people got in there. But it was a really fun show. When was the last time you had seen Against Me, Pat?
I had never seen Against Me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There we go. So this was truly a first.
Yeah, and I've been trying to think of like why because I was super into their first album, and my guess would be that either my parents were like, "You're not going into the city for that," or just that schedules never lined up.
Yeah, would that have been Reinventing Axl Rose? And so that would have been like 2002.
Yeah, so like I was going to the city for things, but like, who knows like where they were? I mean, I'm sure I could look this up, but who knows where they were playing, and whatever. It just so happens this was my first time I got to see them.
Yeah,
so.
I almost guaranteed that up in Massachusetts I would have not been able to, or I don't know about allowed. Allowed might have been like a strong word, but I probably like would not have gone to see them, depending on where they played around that time, Yeah. Probably some club in Boston, probably late on a school night, and I probably would not have been allowed to go.
Yeah, I think that was probably the same for my parents. Just like, you're not going to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was exciting, and it's also kind of fun because it let me feel like I was 16 again.
Yeah. Well, and they played a good number of songs off of that first album, right?
Yeah, I think it was something like 5 songs off that album. We'll be sure to add the set list to this episode.
Yes, check the notes. We'll put the set list in there. But yeah, so it was kind of a great show for new and old fans alike, because a lot of newer stuff and a lot of older stuff in this show, which was really cool.
Yeah, so had you seen them before?
I saw them back in 2006 at I believe what was my last Warped Tour.
Whoa.
Yeah, was that my last one? If I went in 2007, I feel like I'd be embarrassed. But I think it was, I think that was my last Warped Tour.
How many Warped Tours did you go to?
I went to 6
a
row. So that was like all of high school plus 2 years of college. And I think this would have been after my sophomore year of college. Yeah.
Okay.
So this should have been the last one I went to. And it was one of those Warped Tours where I think it was like me and one other friend who were still kind of like into the scene a little bit, but didn't know a lot of the bands on Warped Tour anymore, decided to go. And every year since we started high school, Warped Tour just get further from Boston, like further from where we lived. It got like pushed out to Central Mass basically. And so we were like, let's take the day off of work. We go drive out there. Yeah. We go see it. And the thing that, really made it worth it were like just a few acts. I think getting to see the Dropkicks was fun. Against Me was great and still pretty new to me, actually. 2006 they were a band I knew.
Yeah.
I think I had Searching for a Former Clarity. And that was pretty much my familiarity with them, was just that one album, which I think was like their current album. And then Saves the Day played 2 sets.
Oh, cool.
They played an acoustic set and an electric set.
That's fun.
Oh, and I would be remiss if I didn't say I Am the Avalanche also played that year. So, but those were like...
That's a pretty good...
Granted, that's what I can remember, but also out of, I don't know, dozens of bands, those were kind of the only ones we cared about, I think. Whereas, I think the more years you back up, the more we knew like most of the roster, or were like really excited to see almost something every hour. And that last kind of Warped Tour that we went to was definitely grounded by those acts,
I went to one Warped Tour kind of last minute. My friend had an extra ticket. I only remember seeing Flogging Molly, Taking Back Sunday, and I only remember that because he was swinging the hell out of that mic.
Yeah.
And Anti-Flag.
Okay.
And Anti-Flag, I would say, the best. I didn't know them before that, but it was the coolest.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they put on a good show.
Yeah. But that was my one and only time.
Yeah. Well, we all got to have one.
No, we don't.
Well, soon, not true, because Warped Tour is done.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Just like House of Vans. Just like so many wonderful things in the music world. We wave goodbye to them. But this show that we got to go to was great. A good energy, I would say. And, I mean, the band on stage, they were fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, the whole night was great.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's talk about the openers before we go more into the Against Me set.
Sure. So the first band that played was this band called Taking Meds.
Yep.
And the first thing I noticed was their merch was sweet. I
liked
that. They had this cool like baseball tee. But I don't know how you would describe them, but I just thought like just real great, raw, straightforward punk.
Yeah, that's pretty much what the category I put them into. They seemed like, I don't know where they're from. We should look them up, but they felt like a East Coast brand of it, very much so. It felt like very familiar, even though it was pretty new to me.
Yeah, they had. I was just gonna say they had a certain energy about them.
Yeah, well, they did. They definitely did. But they were cool. We were kind of bopping around, checking out the merch, getting some drinks while they were playing. So I think I can fully admit that we weren't totally locked in, but they were definitely a fun act.
Yeah, I agree. I was trying to see if their Bandcamp said, yeah, they're from New York. So
yeah, there we go.
Hit the nail on the head there.
And I do think that's part of the intention behind these Vans house parties is that, so in this case, the headliner Against Me supposedly gets to curate the actual lineup. And I think the earliest opener is supposed to be a local band, which I think is a really cool thing.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Getting these local bands in the scene to open for these big touring acts is a pretty sweet thing.
Yeah. And another merch-ish kind of takeaway I had from them, I had seen the drummer walking around before the show, and he was wearing a shirt from the band Priests, who, if you do not know them, they're, I guess, if you're a fan of like Savages or like kind of cool like post-punk, highly recommend. But I saw that shirt and I was like, oh, cool shirt, man. Turns out he's a drummer in the band. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah, it's good when that happens.
Yeah.
And then the second opener was this band called Glazerr, who was fantastic. We had a lot of fun watching them.
Yeah, I would describe them as a force of nature.
Yeah, they were essentially a power trio, right? Is how I would describe them. Drummer, lead guitarist, vocalist, and a bassist. And I think the drummer was playing with some triggers and stuff. Like they had a little bit of extra sound going on, which was very cool. It was kind of spacey, atmospheric stuff behind what was essentially sort of a heavy rock band. They were playing riff heavy, kind of, but with like some punk attitude. It was cool as hell.
Yeah, it was like, classic heavy. I think you had said almost like Sabbath.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
with these like incredible, like almost dreamy lo-fi vocals at points. So I thought that was a really cool mixture. And the drummer was wearing a Metallica t-shirt. So like that, it was interesting to watch like the sounds kind of evolve over time.
Yeah. It was especially like that, the vocals with the overall sound of the band and guitar and stuff was a cool contrast with them. And just that they had a freaking good ass energy on stage too. The bassist was like in everything, and lead singer, she was fantastic. And
right. And you know how like at shows like you get like the two guitarists and they'll like solo off each other. They did that, but instead of soloing, it just seemed like they were both trying to push one another over. Like they were pushing like into each other.
Oh yeah, at one point they just smashed up against each other, and their instruments were like dissonantly hitting each other's strings.
It was the best. And
kind of getting this like. It
was great,
and that was it. Basically, took the spot of a solo in one of the songs.
There was also a point where the lead guitarist, whose name is Clementine, Clementine Creevy, kind of wandered off and like hid behind a bunch of the amps. And I was like, oh, cool. Like there's going to be like a solo here or whatever. And they just all kept chugging along on the same riff.
Yeah.
But they had just decided, I'm going to go hide behind this amp. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
And then when they came back, I think that's the song they sang upside down for the rest. Like back to the audience, like arched backwards and belting it out. Yeah.
That was very, very fun. So yeah, it was cool to see those couple openers, and then it was the main event. Against Me was, as we've already said, they were fantastic. But we ran into a friend of the show, Mikey Erg, at the show, and he said something on the way out that was pretty good.
Yeah, we walked up and we're like, "Hey man, like how's it going?" And he was like, "Listen, I've seen so many Against Me shows," and then he like pointed aggressively with his finger, and he was like, I defy anybody here to tell me that this wasn't the best one, which made me feel really good because it's the only one I've ever been to.
Yeah, I mean, that is a true like ringing recommendation.
Yeah.
And a great review of a show. And I think it lived up to it.
Yeah, I mean, to have them open with I Was a Teenage Anarchist was like perfect.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah, there were a lot of really great moments, and I would also I would guess a highlight for you was the encore.
Oh, yeah. So Night Vale or Joseph Fink had done this podcast called I Only Listen to the Mountain Goats, where they interviewed John Darnielle about All Hell West Texas. Long story short, Laura Jane Grace did a cover of the best ever death metal band in Denton. And at the end of the show, Laura came out and was like, please indulge me. I'm going to do a cover. It's from my friend. It's about where I'm from. And I was like, oh, you're not from Texas, but I'm guessing this is going to be a Mountain Goat song. And so I took out my phone to record it, and she played Going to Georgia, which is from one of my favorite like sets of Mountain Goats songs, which are the Going To series. Mm-hmm. It's all about going somewhere, and that one's very dramatic, but I like it a lot, and it made me very happy. And I just on the walk here listened to that video from that night.
Oh wow.
And I can hear myself singing in it, and the whole time I was like, ugh, oh man, miss some of those notes.
Yeah, that's okay.
But it was great. It was like, because you could hear the crowd singing it, and I think it encapsulated the energy of the night. So
yeah,
it was cool.
Yeah, it was a really great cover. And that's, you are the Mountain Goat super fan of the two of us. So I was only, vaguely familiar with it, but it also it just felt like a great Mountain Goats cover too. You know, true in spirit and sound and all that type of stuff, which is very cool.
I agree.
Yeah, I think I leaned over to you at one point. They started playing Don't Lose Touch earlier on in the set. And for anyone unacquainted, Don't Lose Touch, probably at that point in their history was like their pop song. And I was very much like, yeah, man, I think this is how I got into them. Was this great, simple poppy rocker that was probably my introduction to that band. And that was super fun to watch that live. I was stoked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. Was there anything, I don't know, any songs you would have wished to see? Not that the show would have been any better had the set list been different, but as an Against Me fan, was there anything just a song maybe you really dig? It'd be so cool to see it live, maybe.
I think it was such a good set list that I'm not sure. I think it's the kind of thing where I think if one song had been swapped out and replaced with that, I don't know. I feel like there's always going to be a song that I would love to hear live, but you can only fit so many songs.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think the framing of that question is tricky. I guess all I'm trying to get at is what's one of your favorite songs by Against Me?
Okay, so I think I'm going to try to answer this question in two different ways.
Sure.
I would have liked to have seen more of Transgender Dysphoria Blues because I think that is one of the greatest albums of all time. Not even for Just Against Me. I think that's a very important and awesome album. It's so much, and they played stuff from it, but I would have liked to have seen more. That said, I was very excited to hear. I mean, they played stuff from Reinventing Axl Rose, which was exciting for me. But they played, sorry, I'm looking, it's a very long title. Turn Those Clapping Hands into Angry Bald Fists.
Yeah.
That one just has an energy to it that, looking back on it, I think that's probably why, it may have inspired some politics of just, because that song talks about, singers kind of singing these words that don't really mean anything or aren't empowering. So it's kind of take the power into your own hands and
right.
Or at least that's how I'm interpreting it. So that was fun to hear live.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorites that were played or?
I mean, I thought it was such a great set, there was nothing that left me wishing for anything more. But I think for maybe good reason, probably two of my favorite Against Me songs were not a part of that night, which is totally cool. But weirdly enough, I became a huge fan of New Wave, which I think as an album was they probably started to lose some people at that point. I mean, and gain some people. Yeah. It was just a little slicker, a little more anthemic, but Thrash Unreal off of that album, which is a big single, is one of my favorite songs of all time, I would say. And I just truly, truly love that song. And for whatever reason, that's my album, even though maybe I've even listened to Searching for a Form of Clarity even more, at this point. But so that's one of my favorite songs. It just is, it's so, I don't know. It's such a catchy and gutsy song. I love that tune. And then kind of on the total other end of it, I would say one of my favorite ones is Cavalier Eternal, which is, I don't know. I don't think it's on their acoustic EP. It's from Against Me. It's from their second album. I'm almost positive.
It's on the original Cowboy.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. And it is kind of like a country song.
As the Eternal Cowboy. Sorry, there's two listings here. And
As the Eternal Cowboy is the actual album, and As the Original Cowboy is the demo's album, I think.
Yeah.
But so from Eternal Cowboy, and that was the song I think I'd mentioned to you a little bit on Friday when we saw the show, where I was like, the minute I discovered that they kind of had this folky aspect to them, this like folk punk thing, they really solidified themselves as one of my favorite bands, because it's just that intersection tends to be what I love, and that goes for a band like the Avett Brothers too, who are just on the other end of the spectrum. You know, they are mostly folky but have this kind of like punk rawness sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's what drew me to that band. And kind of similarly, this punk band that has this folky thing that they can also do, I think is what drew me to Against Me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's also one of my favorite songs that I would like at this point probably never even expect to be seen played.
Sure.
But always going to be a favorite.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I was telling you on Friday that I don't really remember how I found them. I want to say maybe it was somebody's back patch, but I don't think I was that cool, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely like Napster, right? Like definitely that era. Because I was trying to think of song titles on the way here of like, well, what's my favorite Against Me song?
Right.
And I was realizing like, I don't really know a lot of the song titles, because when I downloaded them in like 2003, whoever I got them from had renamed all the songs.
Yeah.
So like, the only one that was named correctly was Sink Florida Sink.
Yep.
But there was one that was just a sad face, like the colon and then parentheses. And so a lot of them, I was like, it was enough that I didn't know what song titles to trust.
Yeah.
So like A Pint of Guinness, and I was like, is that what this person renamed it as? But
I think I similarly don't know a lot of the song titles, honestly, because I kind of started listening to them on CDs when I already had a car. And so I was throwing the CD in and never looking at the jacket, you know?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, like a lot of my initial listening to those first few albums, probably.
A lot of my initial listening was reinventing Axl Rose, and then being nervous to listen to anything else because I was like, this is so good. What if the rest isn't? And then I listened to the rest and I'm like, oh, it is.
Yeah.
It's all great.
Yeah. Yeah.
The new albums have wonderful song titles, and they did not play the one with my favorite name,
which is
Fuck My Life 666, which is such a good...
That is such a good title.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, truly a beautiful title. I'll say one thing about the show, maybe a little brief PSA, if we can get up on our soapbox, is that it was weird about that show is that there were still like shithead dudes there. Yeah. And you really expected at this kind of show with the bands and the lineup and stuff that we would avoid that. And I mean, I think you maybe blasted this out on social, but folks, if you're going to crowd surf up to the stage, don't touch the band.
Yeah, well, don't touch people that haven't consented to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're going to crowd surf, just don't be a jerk about it. Like, try to keep your feet not kicking people's faces. If you accidentally hit somebody, go check on them. But if you're going to get up on the stage, if you're going to do it, don't go near the instruments. Don't trip over the cables, because I've seen people trip over a patch cable and knock out an entire instrument. Do not touch the people up there unless they're like encouraging you to come over to the microphone.
Right.
And if security's throwing you out, get out.
Needless to say, there was one guy who did not take any of that advice or really take any cues, and had to be forcibly removed from several different locations before he was actually out of the building. And it was just very frustrating in general at a show. Otherwise, so nice.
Also, if it's a calm song or like the crowd doesn't want to mosh, don't throw your body around.
Yeah.
Like, read the room. We know you want to dance. You can dance.
Yes.
Don't turn yourself into a missile and try to knock people over, because you're going to get clocked in the face.
Yeah, there were some issues during Cherry Glazer's set, which you probably can't exactly tell from our description, but it wasn't exactly a circle pit type of band.
It was like...
And people just wanted it to be one.
it was the heavy that like heavy metal gets, where it's like just kind of the slow head nodding.
Yeah.
Not like we're gonna like do the wall of death or whatever.
Right.
But yeah. Also, I didn't punch anybody in the face.
No.
I didn't do that.
Someone on the circle who I think got a little fed up did.
Yes, and they were justified, I would say.
They seemed very justified in it. So that's it. We'll leave you with a lesson, a PSA. I don't think we're just now punk fans in our 30s, but I do think the scene in the world is becoming better and more considerate, and that kind of bullshit stands out more. That kind of stuff that you used to get away with when you were younger and you used to get away with in your high school is dumb, and you shouldn't do it.
Before we wrap up, I do want to say, after the show, we were lucky enough to meet Laura, who is one of the sweetest human beings.
Yes.
But I mean, our interaction was nice, but I do want to point out that there were other people in the area that ran up to her and were just like, I just want you to know, I didn't know your band before tonight. My friend made me come. I want to know everything you've ever done, because that was incredible. And then somebody ran across the street to say the same exact thing. And when shows do that, it's like the coolest feeling.
I thought that was so cool, because they, to me, Against Me is, if you like this kind of music, you know who they are.
Yeah.
And most people, I think, by whatever adulthood age, if they don't already listen to punk, they probably like have a thing against it or something. Like it's probably not for them, Yeah. And it was so cool to see people that I'm like, oh, whether you're new to the genre or somehow had never heard of Against Me, it's so cool that you came to the show and loved it. Yeah, I think that's super fun.
Yeah, so it was a great time. I hope you go out and listen if you have never listened before, or even if you have. Yeah. I mean, this is basically what I say about our podcast. But go check out Against Me, Reinventing Axl Rose, Transgender Dysphoria Blues, just anything. I don't know. The whole
catalog.
It's great.
Yeah, and check out Cherry Glazerr and Taking Meds, too, the opening bands. They're both super fun.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us for this brief little concert recap. This is the first one of these we've done, but pretty fun to do something different. Yeah. If you like the show, stay tuned. We are going to have a new live episode out next week, which we're very excited about. And in the meantime, get at us on the social medias. It's at Repeater Show on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook and all that good stuff too.
Yeah, and tell us about some shows you've been to recently. We try to listen to what you send us.
Absolutely. We're always looking for new tunes. All right, folks, take care.
Bye.
I think we don't say it if it's just us. Bye, everybody.
Repeater is hosted by Evan Ford Barden and Patrick Cartelli. This episode was recorded at Magnet Training Center in New York City, where they offer classes in improv, musical improv, sketch writing, storytelling, and more. Find out more at magnettheater.com. Visit us online at repeater.show for live dates, hot music tips, and show archives. Theme music by the Sun Lions. Everything else by Love Nest Productions. Welcome to Repeater.